All right. Well, thank you very much, Glenn, and thank you all for being here, and thank all of you that decided to stay, even though Phyllis is not here, and we have to bring someone in out of the bullpen. I would say that it's always a privilege and a pleasure to speak at Alcoholics Anonymous. My connection is to Phyllis is that my Joe, her deceased husband, was my sponsor and best friend for 34 years. So that's the one thing we shared in common. And Phyllis had accepted the opportunity to speak here, and then she realized she was double booked. She has a family thing up at a lake in Oklahoma, and the internet connection there is no good. So she asked me if I would mind, and obviously I don't mind. So thank you for having me, and thank you for being here. I always like to say that I originally came to Alcoholics Anonymous on April 27th of 1980. And with the exception of one little 7-year slip, I've been sober the whole time. And my current sobriety date, by God's unfailing compassion, is I woke up on the morning of November 9th, 2000, with a desire to live, and something came out of me that sounded like God help me. So I like to say that for a number of different reasons. Number one, I'm not an expert in Alcoholics Anonymous on what to do, but I am an expert in what not to do. So I will share that hopefully today. But my experience is, although not unique, I'm very grateful for it being what it is. I never discourage. I have the most utmost respect for everybody that's come to Alcoholics Anonymous and stayed sober. I have a tremendous admiration and respect for people that have longevity in years in the program. But my experience has taught me that quantity, is not the end all for AA. My experience teaches me that quality is what matters in Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I focus on the quality of my time, then the quantity will take care of itself. And like I mentioned, my sobriety date is November 9th. So a couple of weeks ago, I celebrated another 23 years sobriety, 8,413 days. And that's the way I look at it. I was thinking this morning, so I mentioned that my friend Joe McCoy, I can say that, he's passed along now. I met Joe in 1980. And tomorrow, the 23rd of November, is the date of his passing. And it will be 9 years since he passed tomorrow. And he died, the week of Thanksgiving. Actually, tomorrow will be Thanksgiving, and you can rest assured I'll be thinking of Joe and Phyllis. Actually, Phyllis is still my wife's sponsor, Suzanne, my wife. Phyllis is still her sponsor. And I was privileged to be the officiant of Joe's funeral, which we did the week of Christmas. So it's a poignant time of year for me to have that remembrance. And I can tell you that year that he passed away, that 30 days in between Thanksgiving and Christmas when we did that funeral was the longest 30 days and the hardest 30 days I think I ever lived. So I had a great teacher. I've had great teachers in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I consider some people that are on the meeting today great teachers. And so I want to start with the reading that's found on page 164 real quick. And it says, still you may say, but I will not have the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. God will determine that, so you must remember that your real reliance is always upon Him. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose to you more to you and to us. Ask Him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order, but obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with Him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. And we shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. And you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the happy road to destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. And I'm one of those people that have been very fortunate in Alcoholics Anonymous. I like to say that I've literally had the best that Alcoholics Anonymous has to offer. And I'm one of those people that have had the opportunity to meet some of us, so to speak. I've met the people that were literally the giants in AA. Through my affiliation with Joe and coming in the 80s, I just had a chance to meet a lot of people that are no longer with us and spend quality time with them. And that always leads me to say there's two things that I always want to make sure that come through when I share it at Alcoholics Anonymous. And number one is the unique fellowship that we have, the fellowship of the Spirit. And that is, this organization and this fellowship we have, we're allowed to talk to people about things that you can't talk to anybody else about. Who do you talk to about this stuff? Who do you talk to about the things that have happened to us and the things that I've done, right? Who do I get to talk to about that? And the other thing is thank you. Thank you. I want to thank you for my life, for my sobriety, for everything that has happened, because everything that I have, everything that I've ever been given literally since I was 21 years old is a result of Alcoholics Anonymous in one way or another. And so, again, I want to say thank you. So like I said, I woke up on the morning of coming back into AA. I attended my first meeting in 1980. And it was a sunny morning in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A sunny Sunday morning, and I walked in and a man told my story. It was an open meeting and there was a speaker there, and I can still remember the man just like it was yesterday. His name was Clem. And Clem, I was 4 months before my 22nd birthday, and Clem was an older guy. He was an old guy. He was probably 35 at that time, and he told my story, and he told a story of alcoholism. I remember that he was a blackout drinker, and he told stories about waking up in places, not knowing how he got there, doing things that he didn't want to do. And he basically told a story of shame and humiliation and regret. And I felt every word of it. And I felt as though I had walked into some kind of a secret society or something, because for the first time in my entire life, I felt like I was in a place where people that, like I said, there were people that I could talk to about the kind of things that I had been doing and the things I had experienced, the things I was through. So a couple of days later, or that was on Sunday, and I think Monday or Tuesday, I went to my first closed meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's where I met Joe. And Joe was so in Oklahoma. What they would do is they have the meeting where everybody else is, but if there's any newcomers, they also have a beginners meeting, and they take the new people and they separate them off in another room, and they give them a little talking to straight out of the book. And in Oklahoma, what we would do is we would present the information that's found in the doctor's opinion, and there is a solution. I didn't know this at the time, but that's what they did to me that night. And Joe and another man his name was CB, and at that time, CB was the state delegate to the General Service Conference. So again, my very first meeting, I'm with the president of Alcoholics Anonymous. And they opened up the book and they started to explain to me the malady of alcoholism. And we read a paragraph. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. The sensation is so elusive that while they admit it is injurious, they cannot differentiate between the true and the false. Their alcoholic life becomes their only normal one. They are often restless and irritable and discontent unless they can again experience the sense of ease and comfort which comes at once by taking a few drinks which they see others taking with impunity. And after they succumb to the desire again, as so many do, and they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution to stop, this is repeated over and over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there's very little hope of their recovery. And that, my friends, is my story. That is me. I knew it the minute I heard it, and it's never changed. It's been me ever since forever, right? I started off because I liked the effect produced by alcohol. Now I can say I was raised in an alcoholic home. My dad later came to Alcoholics Anonymous on my 18th birthday, and he stayed sober till the day he died. He died with 43, 44 years of sobriety. And he took me to that first meeting where Clem spoke. And then he took me and dropped me off at the second meeting. He didn't stay. He dropped me off. And but anyway, when they read that story in the doctor's opinion, when they read that paragraph, I knew that was me. And they started to explain the disease of alcoholism, the obsession of the mind, and the allergy of the body. And they started talking about the allergy of the body. And they said, alcoholism, I remember CB said, he was talking about the allergy of the body and the thing that makes an alcoholic, right? The phenomenon of craving, and how this is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. And and he asked me, he said, Rick, are you allergic to anything? And I said, well, yeah, I am. I remember when I had first been thrown out of the house and started doing my own laundry. I started breaking out in these red spots. And I went to a doctor. And the doctor asked me, he said, well, what kind of detergent are you using? And I said, well, I'm using Tide detergent. And he said, well, I think you might be allergic to that Tide. Why don't you stop using that Tide and let's see what happens? And I remember at the time that when I walked out of that doctor's office, okay, I quit that Tide just like that. Okay. I mean, that day I went cold turkey. Okay, I didn't have to go to treatment. I didn't have to taper off. No slowing down. I mean, I literally quit Tide that day, and I can tell you today that's been 45 years ago, and I am still Tide free. Never And not one time in the entire time since that happened have I ever woke up in the middle of the night and gone and like pulled the blinds down and decided like I was going to sneak a load or something like that. I mean, I stopped that stuff right then. And they said, well, that's exactly what we're talking about, is that alcoholism is an allergy and it has an abnormal reaction. And the only people that have it are people that are alcoholic. And everybody else drinks with impunity. They get all they want every time they want. And I did not know that. I couldn't hardly believe that. And I remember CB saying this so clearly. He said, he said, so the way we do this is that we just don't take it's the first drink that gets us. So we just don't take that first drink. And if you do not take that first drink, you will never get drunk. And you will never experience the allergy to alcoholism. And I said, man, that's too simple. There's got to be a harder way to do this. But he said, no, that's it. And he said, I've been sober for 35 years. Now, this was in 1980. He'd been sober 35 years. He said, I've been sober 35 years. And he said, I haven't quit drinking forever. But when I woke up this morning, I decided that I didn't want to go back to and live the way I was living before I got here. So I made a decision that today I would not take a drink. And that's how we do it. We try not to take one drink for one day. And it was just mind boggling. It was that to me, it was like I said, this is too simple. There's got to be a harder way to do this. But that was it. And also, there's another paragraph that follows the one that I just mentioned, and I think it's probably one of the first great promises in the big book. And it says, on the other hand, as strange as it may seem to those who do not understand, this person who had so many problems, who ever solving them, right? Once this psychic change has occurred, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. And so, to me, that's probably the first great promise in the book, is that the same person who had so many problems, ever getting over them all, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. And so I can tell you today that that promise has come true for me, right? That the same person that had so many problems that Monday evening has gotten over all of them. And the only effort necessary, that being is that psychic change, and to follow a few simple rules. And what are the simple rules? Well, the simple rules are, number one, don't swallow any alcohol, right? From sun up to sundown, and then do that again, one day at a time. Don't swallow any alcohol. And the second thing is apply the program of Alcoholics Anonymous to your life. That has happened for me. So quickly, I'll just tell you the kind of drinker I am. I'm a blackout drinker. I was a young budding musician, which is a great career path for a budding alcoholic. And I have always been, every time I drank, I can tell you there's literally no telling what's going to happen. And I remember one night, the boys in the band and I were closing down the bars, and we'd gone to an after hours place, and we were drinking flaming armadillos. Now, first of all, if you're drinking drinks that you're lighting on fire, right? I can tell you, in the 40-something years that have gone by since then, I've never seen anybody drinking flaming armadillos. I've never seen anybody drinking drinks that they light on fire. But that night, that's what we were doing, and we were having a great time. I remember that. And afterwards, I went home, I took my clothes off, and I laid down on the couch and I went to sleep. And that would have been fine, but the problem is I wasn't in my house when I broke in somebody else's house and got naked and went to sleep on their couch. And the Tulsa Canine Unit came to wake me up. So that's my story, really, in a nutshell. I'm the type of guy that can literally start drinking on a Thursday night in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and come to on Sunday morning with a one-legged woman in Roswell, New Mexico. Okay, that's my story. I have no control over what's going to happen when I drink alcohol, and what is going to happen is as good a your guess as it is mine. And one night it could be the greatest time of our life. We could have fun, we could have dancing and laughter and conviviality, and the next night it's canines and a long distance road trip that we don't even know where we're going. I didn't even know how I got to Roswell until I walked outside and saw my car. So that's the kind of guy I am. That's the kind of guy I am, and that's the way that I drink. And I repeat that over and over and over. It's like Russian roulette with alcohol. And so that's my story. And everybody that I knew drank about like I did. Everybody that I ran with, the boys in the band, and everybody that I ran and caroused with did the same things that I was doing. But there wasn't anybody that was having happen to them the things that I was having happen to me. There was no one that I knew that was winding up in the same jams that I was winding up. No one had the stories that I had and the adventures with alcohol. Like I said, everybody I knew drank about like I did, but no one was having the same issues having. Right? And who can you talk to about this stuff? I mean, when I got out of jail for waking up, being arrested in that woman's house, I was facing a felony charge of first-degree burglary. I had a $15,000 bail. Now that was that's a lot of money in 1979 for a 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid, right? And I had a job and I couldn't go to work the next day and people say, "Hey, Rick, what'd you do this weekend?" Well, I couldn't exactly tell them everything that happened over the weekend. And, I was at that same meeting after they took me in the beginners group, then they took me in with the other group. And I remember a guy said he lost a car. Well, I lost a car when I was drinking. And I don't mean that the repo man came and got it, although I had that happen too. But I mean, one night I had the car and I was with the car, and the next thing you know, the car was gone. I have no idea where the car was. And, after about 16 or 17 years, I quit looking for the car. But, who can you talk to about this stuff? So you go to work every day. Everybody, we all go to work every day. We're all going to work, and everybody's driving in, and everybody knows you, and you know them, and I know where you park, and you know where I park. I know what kind of car you drive. You know what kind of car I drive. We're just every day we're coming to work, and then all of a sudden one day Rick shows up walking. And everybody says, "Hey, Rick, where's your car?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I don't know." And they, "Well, what do you mean you don't know?" I mean, I don't know. I don't know what I mean, what I don't know. "Well, where were you the last time you saw it?" "Well, I don't know." "What were you doing?" "I don't know." Right? Who can you talk to about this stuff? Who can you talk to? Well, you can't talk to, it's kind of hard to talk to your coworkers and tell them the truth, and your boss. They don't understand. But that night in that meeting, when that guy said, "I lost a car," I knew he understood. When I told him, I knew he understood. And again, that's the thing about Alcoholics Anonymous, where we have the ability to save lives, literally. You guys saved my life. And again, like I said, how do you say thank you? How do you say thank you for that? So I started my journey in Alcoholics Anonymous. I met my first wife in AA. I met my second wife in AA. And thank goodness the second wife, Suzanne, that's lasted a lot longer than the first wife. But so I can tell you, if you want to find a relationship in Alcoholics Anonymous, there's just like that old saying, the odds are good, but the goods are odd. And my first wife, oh, what's her name? All I'd say about bless her heart is two great things about her, that she taught me what love is and what love isn't. And I realized it wasn't with her, and it was with Suzanne, who came later. But I learned that by having my first wife. And the other thing that I would say about bless her heart is that the last time I saw her was the last time I saw her. Thank God. Never had any lingering issues. But and I met Suzanne. I met Suzanne at a young people's conference. We were on the young people's conference. I was the treasurer. And I remember one day she came, we were having a business meeting, and of course we were young back then, and she showed up, and I saw that, and I I automatically knew the meaning of, if you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, you're ready to take certain steps. And that's exactly what I did. And thank goodness Suzanne and she's in the program. She's in the other room. She's in the program, and we laugh about it all the time. And in April, we celebrated, oh my God, 34 years legal married. So that's another gift of Alcoholics Anonymous, is that we would have never made it that distance. We went out together. So I can tell you this, that if you're not working the steps, then you're unworking the steps. And that's exactly what happened to me. So Alcoholics Anonymous gave me a lot of things in my first trip through. And as I was becoming increasingly more successful, I became increasingly less active. I got busy doing things that other than Alcoholics Anonymous. I was working all day as a commissioned salesperson. I went back to college, and I was going to college all night. Then I'd come home and check the kids' homework. And it was just, I got busy. And I got so busy that one day I just was too busy for AA. And I can tell you this, if you're active in Alcoholics Anonymous and you've had that psychic change and a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps, it's not something that's going to, we're not going to be active and working the program one day and drunk the next. I had to go crazy first. I had to go insane. And that took a little while. So I was very active in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous for the first 10 years I was in, and then probably the last 3 that I was in, I was less active and less active and less active on a progressively a little more and more basis. And the next thing you know, I was entertaining some clients at a meeting one time, and this waitress came up and asked me if I'd like a warm, buttery nipple. And I said, yes, I think I would. And she gave me one of those, and I took that drink, and I had literally no idea that even though I had not had a drink for 13 years, that allergy that those guys had told me about on that Monday evening had been progressing for that entire time. And even though I hadn't suffered from its effects for 13 years, that night I started all over again. And that one drink, which sounded so appealing and so alluring, I had no idea that it would be 7 years, literally 7 years, before I drew a sober breath. And I didn't just taper. I mean, I did. It's just like they say, alcoholics don't taper off. We taper on. And that's exactly what I did, was I took off. That drink reached out and grabbed a hold of me like a gorilla, and it almost killed me. And 7 years later, everything that I had put together over a 20-year period of time was at risk. My wife was gone. My daughter was gone. My career was shot, and I hadn't been out of the house in days. And I was laying on a garage floor, and literally something gurgled up out of me that sounded like God help me. And I can tell you that, thank goodness, that that's exactly what happened. I always like to say that on the morning of November 9th, because of God's unfailing compassion, right, I woke up with a desire to live. I don't know about getting sober. I wanted to live. And I can, we can't really explain to people how to take the first step, but I can tell you this. That morning, the thought of doing what I had been doing for the last 7 years, the idea that I would wake up a week from then still doing the same thing, or a month, or another 6 months, the thought that I was going to have to continue to do what I had been doing up to that point was more than I could bear. I was at the end of my chain. And just like Bill said, I had met my match. I was overwhelmed. And fortunately for me, I have connections. So they took me and they put me, there's a lovely institution in Tulsa, Oklahoma that's managed by the Oklahoma Department of Corrections. And that's where they took me. And they got me a room in a lockdown psych ward. And that's exactly where I belong. And they took me, and I always like to say this, that when you go into a psych ward, anybody that's been on a psych ward, we all know the same thing. Those are the gates of insanity. And I went right through them. I had a friend who was probably the craziest person that I had ever known. He had put his mother down in a tornado shelter and stuck a garden hose down in there and turned it on. And when they found her, she was up to her neck in water. My friend's name was Tim. And Tim ended up doing 2 years in the penitentiary for that. And Tim was one of the craziest people I had ever met in my entire life. He was one of my buddies. And last I'd heard about Tim, they had arrested him. He was running naked down the runway at Tulsa International Airport. And I was in this psych ward, and they had one room where you could smoke. I was a smoker back then, and we had one room where you could smoke. And I was in that room, and I was shaking like a beagle passing a peach seed. And I literally, someone came in to put a blood pressure cuff on my arm. And when I looked up, damn if it wasn't my buddy Tim. A tech on the ward and a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm telling you, there was no one on the face of the planet. And like I said earlier, I've had the very best that Alcoholics Anonymous has to offer. I've met the giants and the heroes. But that day, in that psych ward, in that nut house, a guy named Tim McWilliams, the craziest person I'd ever known, put a blood pressure cuff on my arm, and he said, "Rick, I'm glad to see you." And I said, "I'm glad to see you too, Tim." And he saved my life. He saved my life. He was my Debbie. He was fresh-skinned and glowing. A couple of days later, on the same ward, I was having a total psychotic break. Everybody in this place was either coming from the joint or going to the joint, or in some way we were all in the system. And I was having a total mental breakdown. And my buddy Tim and my roommate, Tony, who had just done 7 years of armed robbery, they came in and scooped me up off the floor. And I know they didn't know what to do with me. But Tim said a little prayer. And he said, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined to me, and he heard my cry for help. And he lifted me out of a horrible pit, out of the mire clay. And he set my feet on a rock and has established my going. Do not withhold from me your tender mercies, O Lord. Your love and your truth will always preserve me and help me. Tarry not, but come forth speedily, for my enemies have encamped around me on every side, and my iniquities are more than the hairs on my head. Please come quickly and help me. And boom. And I mean, boom, boom. My life changed in the blink of an eye. In 1 minute, I was having a total psychotic break, a puddle person. And in the next minute, I felt a presence that overwhelmed me. And it pulsed and got stronger and stronger. And the hair on my arm stood up. And I remember holding my arm up and looking at those hairs standing up. And Tim and Tony held their arm, and the hair was standing up on their arms too. And it was a presence that was all power, all love, all peace. I was just overwhelmed with it. Literally, in the blink of an eye, my life changed. And I had the startling revelation, literally the startling revelation that somehow, some way, they were going to let me out of there. And I never had to come back unless I wanted to. I don't know how I knew that, but I knew it. I knew it that night. And I believe that really that night I had a spiritual experience. I know I did. The only difference between me and anybody else that's not had one or not had one of those kind is that I know what I'm looking for. That night I came to believe. I came to believe. And I have, in the 23 years that have gone by since then, I have not forgotten that night. And I have not forgotten that presence that visited me in that insane asylum. And every day, literally every day, 8,000 something days, I wanted some more of that. And I've tried every day to acquaint myself with and to continue to be in contact with whatever that presence was that touched me that day. And I've found that the program of Alcoholics Anonymous has enabled me, has opened that door and given me the pathway to that presence. And if you were to ask me what God is, I would tell you God is a presence that can be known, experienced, apprehended. And that's what it is to me. And that's what I continue to know it to be, and that's what I continue to pursue it as. So I started back into the program. And, our book, I read what I told you, what I think the first promise is, and our book makes a lot of promises. The promises what can happen if we work the program, and promises if we don't work the program. And I've had those promises start to come true in my life. One of the promises is one of my favorites, is follow the dictates of a higher power and you will live in a new and wonderful world no matter what your present circumstance. And that promise has also come true for me. I am no longer, all the locks had been changed on my house. They had restraining orders on me. Nobody wanted anything to do with it. Those circumstances have changed. I'm with the same wife that I was with then, and we've celebrated year after year after year, and we've been able to watch our lives unfold in a beautiful and glorious way. I have 2 grandkids that have never seen their grandpa drunk. I have been given 2 new careers and the opportunity to stand with people at the greatest times of their life, when they're getting married and when they're getting buried. And it's been a wonderful ride. It's been a wonderful ride. And I could go on and on and on about the things that have happened to me in Alcoholics Anonymous. Our book says, in the chapter to We Agnostics, there's a paragraph where it says, deep down inside every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. It may be obscured by pomp, calamity, and worship of other things, but in some form or another, it is there. For a long time, when I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had been thoroughly indoctrinated. I was born Catholic. I've been a Baptist, a Mormon, a Holy Roller, and a New Ager. I've been arguing with Sunday school teachers since I was able to talk. And basically the argument was, they always said, if you believe this, you're one of us. And if you don't, you're not. And all my life I had been on not. I loved the atmosphere, I loved the fellowship, but there were always certain things that I could never buy, and I was always on the out. But now, with my experience that I had in that nut house, I knew I was in. And Alcoholics Anonymous gave me that when they said you can have a God of your own understanding. And I had always believed that paragraph to mean that that one day I would have a conception of God, Rick's idea of God, and it would be an idea that would help me along the way, and I would then I'd just be able to go. I have Rick's idea of God, and that's what I would go with. But now I understand that paragraph to really mean that it's not deep down inside every man, woman, and child is not Rick's idea of God, but it's the fundamental idea, God's idea of Rick. That idea may be obscured by pomp, calamity, and worship of other things, but it's there. And that has been what has been unfolded to me. Is the difference between the Rick that Rick created and the Rick that God created. And so I try today to be the Rick that God created, to allow that to unfold and to present itself. And that has been the greatest journey of my time in Alcoholics Anonymous. There's a poem that I love so much, and it really describes to me the beauty of what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. It goes, where is God? Is God afar, out beyond the furthest star? No, God is not far. He is near. He is nearer than my fear. He is nearer than my needs. And when I call him, he will heed, for he is in the midst of me. And when the way uncertain is, he will hold my hand in his. In the valley of the night, I will have an inward light. He is faith. He will hear. He is love, and he is near. He is in the midst of me. Need I even call it all? Knows he not each sparrow's fall? Lord Emmanuel, thou art ever present in my heart, and no matter how far I will roam, in your heart I am at home, because thou art in the midst of it. And everything that I have, everything is a result of my coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, and the total destruction, total surrender has opened up the way. And Alcoholics Anonymous, like I said, I've had the opportunity to, I met Joe, and Joe and Charlie, and I was just a life-changing experience. I'm so fortunate. I'm so grateful that I still have a relationship with Phyllis, and I can tell you Phyllis is She, she's a one and only. And Suzanne and I love her dearly. And I know tomorrow my heart will be with her because she'll be thinking of Joe on Thanksgiving Day. November 3rd of this year, he would have been 50, 53, 50 years sober this year. So we've already discussed that. I want to thank Glenn. I know Glenn was a pal of theirs. And I want to thank you all for not hanging up on me when you found it wasn't Phyllis. I appreciate you staying with me. You know, the thing I've learned about, I'm going to say this and then I'll shut up. You hear people talk a lot about faith, and we all have faith. We all have faith. Faith is a very simple thing. Every time I walk in a room and I see a chair, I just walk up and sit in it, right? And that's faith. That's a powerful faith, an unshakable faith, an unshakable certainty that things are going to be a certain way. And I walk up and I sit in that chair and I don't ever wonder whether it's going to hold me, whether it's going to support me, whether it's going to get up and leave me, whether I'm not going to know it's there. I know that chair will hold me. And that's the faith. I have that faith. So it's not like I need more faith. I have plenty. I just have to know what to put it in. And today, my prayer is that I have more faith in God than I have in the chair that I'm sitting in right now. And if I can take that simple, powerful faith and place it in the God of my understanding that was there with me in that house and has been with me every day, then I know all will be well with me. So again, I want to thank you all for having me, and I want to thank you for my life and my sobriety. So thank you.